This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast right here on Most Valuable Podcast, where we talk about college football, college basketball. And today, Brandon, what are we doing?
Big board.
Doing our big board, NFL
2.0.
2.0. If you want to check out the first big board, go ahead, check it out on our channel. We have it there. However, this is our updated big board. Before we get into that, and before I explain everything, a little bit of housekeeping. First off, if you like what we're doing here, want to help us succeed, make sure to check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast, link down below in the description. Number 2, if you want an MVP t-shirt, we're selling those as well. All that info down below in the description as well. If you're on iTunes, have an iTunes account, you're listening on iTunes right now, make sure to go give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. And last but not least, go and check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. Bookmark it, and that's where you're going to get everything for MVP. So housekeeping over, try to get that out of the way quickly because we're jumping into our big board. And how we do it, if you're new here, we split it up into 3 segments. On YouTube, it's 3 videos, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, podcast services around the world. It's going to be one long audio form. We start with 25, go 25 through 16, then we go 15 through 6, and then we finish the third segment with our top 5. So, Brandon, before we get into the discussion for 16 through 25, take us through your bottom 25, and I forget, do we start?
25 to 16.
We're going to start from 25 and go up? Okay, start with 25, go on up.
So at 25, slipping in and sliding into my 25 spot, Lamar Jackson, quarterback from Louisville. At number 24, I've got Christian Wilkins, defensive lineman from Clemson. 23, Harold Landry, outside linebacker, defensive end, Boston College. 22, Mason Rudolph, quarterback, Oklahoma State. 21, Connor Williams, offensive lineman, Texas. At 20, Joshua Jackson, cornerback from Iowa. 19, Clellan Farrell, defensive end, Clemson. 18, Mike McGlinchey, offensive tackle from Notre Dame. 17, Darius Geis, running back, LSU. And at 16, Orlando Brown Jr., offensive tackle from Oklahoma.
Well, and mine jumping right into it, number 25, I'm going with an offensive tackle as well. I got Connor Williams, the offensive tackle from the Longhorns. Go Texas. Then at number 24, staying in the state of Texas, but going over to the Aggies, I got Christian Kirk, the wide receiver. Then at number 23, friend of the show from the Michigan Wolverines, defensive lineman Mo Hurst. Then at 22, making his first appearance on a big board, Mike Hughes, the cornerback out of the national champion Central Florida Knights, right, Brandon? National champion Knights? Is that what we're calling them? That's what they are, right? The national champions? You get it. But going on, number 21, Marcus Davenport, defensive end out of University of Texas, San Antonio. Number 20, the cornerback from Iowa, Josh Jackson. 19, Mike McGlinchey, the offensive tackle out of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Number 18, Daron bringing the pain, defensive tackle from Alabama. Number 17, Baker Mayfield, quarterback, Oklahoma. And rounding out my bottom 16, Harold Landry, the pass rusher, I'll say, from Boston College. So the first guy I want to look at, we kind of now spotlight some of the guys within this range. I want to look at the guy that you had just slipping into yours. We've talked about him numerous times. Should so-and-so trade up for him? How high will he go? We looked at him compared to Mason Rudolph because they're kind of the quarterbacks below the Allen, Darnold, Rosen, and Mayfield quarterbacks in this draft. What made you put Lamar Jackson in your top 25? Because I find it interesting. Number 1, I had him in at 24. You didn't have him in. This time around, I don't have him in my top 25. You have him at 25.
So I want to start off with something that a general manager who scouted Lamar Jackson this season had said. Quote, "The Cardinals depend on him too much. He's trying to do it all. I think he has a learning curve. He will need the right system, the right coach, but he's super talented. Jackson suffers with accuracy issues," end quote. So what I see from that is that the Louisville Cardinals, depended on him to do everything, which they did. They depended on him to pass the ball, to run the ball. I'm surprised they didn't depend on him to also catch the ball as well.
Boobie Miles style?
Exactly. But that means that Lamar Jackson is going to make any single team better. Because if he's able to do all that when they're putting all the pressure on him, depending on him to do everything, he could make any team better. And when he has the skills, when he has the arm, the strong arm that allows him to make just about any throw, and especially off-balance throws, he's tough in the pocket, he knows his scheme, he can learn quickly, amazing athleticism that we know he has, great runner, and many are looking at him as being undervalued to where Deshaun Watson was undervalued in this past draft and was skipped over, and picks were traded because they didn't want to end up going with him. And then he fell to the Houston Texans, where they took him, and unfortunately, he got injured middle of the season, but he was turning out to be something special. Something really, really special. And Lamar Jackson, yes, might he need the right system? Might he need the right coach? Might there be a little bit more of a learning curve with him than there would be with, let's say, a Josh Allen, a Josh Rosen, a Sam Darnold? Maybe. But I could still see him being late first rounder, and I continue to say this, New England. A team like New England.
Someone in the comments section
like
also said that on our Mason Rudolph Lamar Jackson one, or it might have been our what would be like, where could he go in the draft? Somebody recently this week, I'm sorry I can't remember your name, agreed with you on that point that New England could be a good landing spot for Jackson. It
would make sense. It certainly would, especially with Tom Brady wanting to probably play for a couple more years, whether or not he wins the Super Bowl. That's which will have already happened when this goes out. But I think Lamar Jackson really is a good fit for that first round. I'm not saying he's going to go top. I'm not saying that he's going to be in the middle, but he could crack the first round because there are teams out there that need quarterbacks. There's teams out there towards the end of the first round who would need a quarterback, who would want a quarterback to come in, learn for a year or two, and then be able to work with them. I just, there's too much talent. And when I've said it, when we've talked about him, when we've talked about Rudolph, when we've put him out there in conversations with everyone else, I've always said that he's uber talented. I've said that I've liked other quarterbacks because I think they're more NFL ready right now. But Lamar Jackson can certainly get to the point where he's an NFL-ready quarterback. Again, it's okay it takes a little bit longer of a learning curve. That's fine. It's okay that you might have to find the right scheme for him. That's fine. You do that because he is so talented. I mean, he just is super athletic, and I think that you get him those right schemes, right coaches, he will be successful in the NFL.
Well, and the thing with Lamar Jackson, reason why I don't have him in mind on my side is I agree with you that I could see him being a late first round guy. My thought process is, because how I view this big board is on my end, regardless of who's picking where. If I'm just going best 25 players off the board, in my mind, these would be the top 25 best players off the board. And needs play into that to where he can be above 25 in a mock draft. However, if we just look at for R2, 25 through 32, because you have him at 25, I would have him in my top 30. I just don't have him in my top 25. Tennessee, don't need a quarterback. Atlanta, doesn't need a quarterback. However, the next two, New Orleans, could draft one to sit behind Drew Brees for a year or two. Pittsburgh could draft one because every year we're asking, is Big Ben going to retire?
And it's getting to the point. I mean, It's getting to that point with him, too.
Minnesota could also draft a quarterback because they don't know what they're going to do with theirs. However, Zimdog does like Teddy Bridge over troubled waters, if I can get that one correct. And then New England could draft him because Tom Brady's not going to play forever, but Philadelphia wouldn't need him because they've got Carson Wentz. So that's within the bottom 25 through 32, that's what? 1, 2, 4 teams out of those teams that's a total of 8 teams. Half of those teams could take him because they could need a quarterback.
And especially when most likely, Josh Allen will be gone, Sam Darnold will be gone, Josh Rosen will be gone, and then it's coming down to Baker Mayfield, Mason Rudolph, Lamar Jackson, Luke Falk. I mean, Lamar Jackson, he's right at the top of that list of those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. I mean, he's one of the top guys there. I mean, I really like Baker Mayfield. Lamar Jackson's extremely talented. Mason Rudolph, I like him. Luke Falk. But I still think if you're going to look at those guys, if you're going to say, okay, we want to take someone who has the most athleticism, it's probably going to be Lamar Jackson. Even though some of those other guys may be more NFL ready, if you're going to take the most athletic guy, you're most likely going to take Lamar Jackson, and that is true. I don't think that there's too many people who would disagree with that, with what he can do overall. But you never know. You never know, and I know we're talking about the 25 best players we think, but you never know what happens in these drafts.
No, you never do.
One pick or non-pick could change the entire way that the rest of the teams think. I mean, and that's why they've got their boards of all these different players at all these different positions where they could go.
The example I'll use is a guy who's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, Randy Moss. 17 other teams passed on him until the Vikings took him. 17 other teams. And he's going to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Just blows your mind at some of that. But I want to move on. You talked about raw athleticism and speed. I want to move on to the next guy we're going to talk about, and that's the guy that I have at 24, just cracking my big board, in Christian Kirk, the wide receiver out of Texas A&M. And the reason why I wanted to touch on this kid is because you look at his film, you look at his stats, he's good. 80 catches this year, over 1,000 yards, 12.6 yards per average, 7 touchdowns this year for the Aggies. The thing that impresses me most is he has the nickname, he's had it since his freshman year apparently, of people call him Baby Beckham, which is a huge name to live up to because you're being compared to Odell Beckham Jr. But I have a question about Christian Kirk because I know when you look at his film and you look at scouting reports, they talk about his raw speed and his explosiveness. And like the one I'm looking here from WalterFootball.com, they mention like how he's elusive and how he could be a great weapon after the catch. Like, give me the ball, I'll catch it, then I'm going to do my damage once the ball's in my hand. And they say here at the end of, in the NFL, Kirk could have number 1 wideout potential despite not being a big player. He could be similar to Beckham, Steve Smith, or Brandon Cooks as smaller receivers who are lead receivers just from their great speed and explosive playmaking. So the thing I wanted to ask you for your opinion, because it's a thought that I had, of this is a guy that could be low first round, but will probably be second and on. Should we look at the raw speed and explosive and go, good, he's good? Or is there something to say where it's like, you know what? He's only 5'11". He's not the tallest wide receiver. Maybe he won't be our number 1, but hey, I could draft him to be a number 2.
Well, here's the thing is that there is the trend, the growing trend, and I've said it multiple times on this podcast, is that quarterbacks are loving their 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys. But 5'11" guys can get it done. You have that speed, you have that burst, you can get down the field, you can be that go-to big threat, big play guy. Quarterbacks like that too. So you don't always have to be the big receiver in terms of height. One of the things that is looking like it might be hurting Christian Kirk is the fact that Kelly Mond did not play well for Texas A&M and wasn't able to get him the ball as much this year because he had 71 catches, 919 yards, 10 touchdowns in 2017. So that's good, but not as good as it possibly could have, which is why more people are looking at him as a 2 maybe third rounder, second or third rounder. However, some people have said he could be a late round one for a team that wants to go and get him. But I think that there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good with a receiver like Christian Kirk. However, if you are of the mindset that you want a big, tall wide receiver, you're not going to go in his direction. You're not going to go for that. And if that's why, I mean, that could be the reason alone why a team may not take him, because they already have a 5'10 guy. They already have a 5'11 guy. They're looking for a 6'6", 6'5 receiver. And
here's the thing I want to point out, and this is nothing to knock Kirk. This is just where my question comes in, where you have, like, they mentioned Steve Smith, and it's like, okay, Steve Smith, 5'9 guy, so he'd be shorter. And he was quick, and he was a deep ball threat for both the Panthers and then the Ravens when he went there. But other receivers, like, you compare him to Odell Beckham, and I kind of hate that comparison already, only because of the fact to where Odell is transcendent almost at the wide receiver position, where it's like he was on Sports Science when he was a rookie, I believe, and the thing that blew my mind was because of his jumping ability and how high he can jump and how far he could jump, he might be 5'11", but they said that his radius with either jumping to the side or straight up, I think it was either a 1 or 2 car garage. I think it was a 1 car garage. That's the kind of width that he could cover within his radius, his catch radius, which to me blew my mind. Because think about standing in the middle of your garage and being like, yeah, you can throw a ball within anywhere in this area and I can catch it.
Well, I mean, that's incredible. And if you can do those types of things, I mean, if you are a talented wide receiver, you should be looked at. And you don't have to be that 6'5 guy. And I just wanted to go over a couple of the wide receivers that aren't that height that are still good in the NFL. Greg Jennings, not, when he was, in his prime with the Green Bay Packers, that was good.
Yeah.
Wes Welker, Manuel Sanders, Golden Tate, Randall Cobb, Julian Edelman. Some of these guys aren't your big, tall wide receivers.
Here's the thing, though.
But they're still effective. They've been great on their teams. Golden Tate, he's the speedster in Detroit. He's still Matt Stafford's go-to guy. People could say, no, it's Marvin Jones. No, it's Golden Tate. He's right across the middle type of guy, and that's a big play threat. Wes Welker, when he was with the New England Patriots, I mean, outstanding. He was a huge go-to guy for Tom Brady. Was he a tall wide receiver? No, he was not.
And that's why I was going to hit a similar thing, but a different aspect of it, where I looked up the top 5 guys in receiving yards this year. In order from top to bottom, Michael Thomas was number 1. He's 6'3". Then you've got Stephon Diggs, Minnesota Miracle, 6 foot. Then you've got Danny Amendola, 5'11". You've got Julio Jones, which is 6'3", and then Ted Ginn Jr., which is 5'11". Now, Ted Ginn, I'm going to put the asterisk for most of his career, especially in Carolina. Thanks for blowing some fantasy games for me. Had a little bit of the drop skis. Didn't know how to catch the ball, per se. But the thing that I look at just with those 2 guys, and some of the guys that you mentioned too, mainly the Patriot wide receivers can be thrown into Danny Amendola a bit, is think back to Rams Danny Amendola. Not the same Danny Amendola that we see with the Patriots, or efficiently, I should say, because he did have 132 targets and over 600 yards in his second season. But part of me feels like those wide receivers benefit from their quarterback. And I know you're saying, well, Ricky, any wide receiver is going to benefit from their quarterback. But you got guys like Amendola, Edelman, even Welker for when he was with the Patriots. You're working with Tom Brady. You're working with the GOAT. He's going to get you the ball. He's going to know what to get you. Odell Beckham gets to work with Eli Manning, who's a top quarterback. You've got Ted Ginn Jr., where I would say this year, you're like, oh, this year he's a top 5 in yards. one, he's working with Drew Brees, which is a phenomenal quarterback. Number two, he's got Michael Thomas on the other side of the field. So how many times is he going up against that top corner, unless it's a team where it's like Josh Norman, you're going to stay on this side of the field. You're not going to follow Michael Thomas. So that's the only question that I'd look into with Christian Kirk is it's nothing against what he could do at the next level. It's just with me, I feel like for him to be successful, it's got to be the right system that's going to get him the ball in open spaces to allow him to make plays after the catch. But also it goes into a fact of who's going to be your quarterback. Like if he goes to Cleveland, I don't think he has that much success than if he goes to like a New Orleans late in the first, or if he goes to a Pittsburgh or a New England or a Philadelphia or even a Minnesota in the later first rather than a team in the early second. You know what I mean?
Well, I do. I know exactly what you mean, but how my comment would be, of course. Mm-hmm. That's what it would be. Of course you're going to benefit and be better if you have a better quarterback. But then you also have to look at the guys like, look at a DeAndre Hopkins. He's a taller wide receiver. He has had a quarterback carousel for so long until Watson comes in, but then he gets hurt, back to the carousel. And he has been so consistently freaking good. Mm-hmm. It's because he's a great wide receiver. I think the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, if he could just, put aside some of his temper tantrums that he has on the sidelines, he could be good for any quarterback. As much as there's quarterbacks who come in and make receivers good, there's receivers who make quarterbacks better. There's receivers who will go up and get the ball, whether they're tall, whether they're a 5'11", and they can just get up and go get it. They can make a quarterback better. So it really goes both ways. It's not necessarily one or the other. It's not, they had a good quarterback, so that's why they're better. They may just be talented themselves.
But Brandon, I want to move into the next one. We got two guys we're going to finish up talking about here in our first kind of part of the podcast. This is a guy you had pretty high on your big board, as I didn't have him in. And really for me, I would almost put a different running back at the tail end before this guy. You had Darius Geis at number 17. What went into your thought process, and what do you like so much about Geis that put him at 17?
Well, the reason I like Darius Geis is, I still look back to a couple of years ago when Leonard Fournette was still there. Mm-hmm. And Leonard Fournette it was the season, I can't remember the year, but it was the season that Leonard Fournette was kind of banged up for maybe the second half of the season something like that.
Last year was kind of banged up.
Was it last year? Or was it the year before? I honestly can't remember which one, but whatever year that was, you guys will know better. But Geis came in, and it was like Leonard Fournette never left. Mm-hmm. You would have thought that was still Leonard Fournette.
That was 2 years ago.
He was still getting those 200 games. He was getting 2 touchdowns. He was running over everybody, and that was the first look at Darius Geis. We're like, well, dang, this guy's going to be good. Bye, Leonard. See you later. That was a good time. Darius, come on. Join the party. So it was like, wow, this guy's really, really good. And then Geis had his own kind of injury issues. So that, if he just stays away from the injury bug, but we kind of thought the same thing with Leonard Fournette. And he did for the most part this year. He played in 13 games. So think if he played every single game.
He did tweak his ankle.
Ankle, and then he missed a game because he was suspended for it, basically.
Well, yeah, he was reading. That's bullshit on Tom Coughlin. He was late to a practice because he was reading books to his son's class, his son's kindergarten class. Like, come on, Tom, really? But I guess rules are rules, so he was suspended.
But I like Darius Geis. He averaged 5.3 yards a carry in 2017. He had over 1,200 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, missed a game in week 5, and he still had all of that. The guy is he's a good athlete. He's a tough runner. He's got speed. He's got quickness. He's got good instincts. He knows how to anticipate what's going to happen, how to anticipate so we can cut, so we can spin, do all that kind of stuff. He's just got really good running ability, and he's one of those guys where what are we seeing a lot in the NFL is it's that running back by committee. Darius Geis looks like the type of running back where he doesn't need a dang committee. He can be a 3-down back.
Like Leonard Fournette had been this year.
Absolutely. I could definitely see Darius Geis because I've already seen, at least in college, there were so many similarities to me of Darius Geis and Leonard Fournette. Very similar. I don't want to say they're the same running back because no one is the exact same, but they look so similar. Their games, their styles, they very much mimic each other. And that's why I think Darius Geis will be good in the NFL because Leonard Fournette has had a lot of success in the system he's in. Especially it helps when your head coach has said, can we just run it every down? Then again, it doesn't do well for your quarterback when he's like, what, I can't pass? But Darius Geis, that's why I believe he's so similar to Leonard Fournette. The success Fournette has had in the NFL, I think Geis can have as well.
Here's my one, I'm not going to say problem because it's not really a problem, but the one issue that I see in the running back position when I think of Darius Geis, and when I look at the running backs this year, Saquon Barkley's up here. The next best back is down here. Like, that's what I see. Like, I don't see any running back realistically. Like, big board wise, yes, you can put a second running back. I almost put Sony Michel in my big board at 24-25. I almost kicked Connor Williams out to put Sony Michel in, but I didn't. However, you can put someone in the big board. I don't see any running back besides Barkley right now being drafted in the first round. However, after Barkley's off the board, I think what comes into it is, yes, Geis is good, but you have Sony Michel, you've got Rashad Penny, who I believe was in your... Is he still in your big board? You took him out to put Geis in. That's right.
I would say I don't think he ever was. He wasn't in the 1.0, and he wasn't in 2.0.
No, I'm pulling the screen back. We're on 2.0. You originally put Penny there, and then you swapped him out for Geis. That's what I'm thinking. But you have Penny, you have Michelle, you also have Jones from Ronald Jones II from USC.
You have Kerryon Johnson.
Johnson. Throw in Nick Chubb if you want. What I think it comes down to after Barkley is, these guys are all good. What round do I want to take a running back, and which one of these guys will be there? That's why I say issue in quotes for Darius Geis, because it's not an issue with him or anything that he brings to the table. It's just let's say someone has him at second round on their big board. Yeah, but I'd rather go with this position here, and we can grab a Penny later. We can grab a Jones later. We can grab a Johnson later. That kind of a thing.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's going to come down to the team that's going to be drafting. How critical do they feel it is to get a running back? And or can they wait? Kind of one of those things. No other running back this year is anything similar to Saquon Barkley. Not in my mind. No. Saquon Barkley is
he's the cream of the crop.
He's a freak athlete that can do a lot of different things, and just he would make any single team better in any way. But then you look at the rest of them. I like Geis because I feel like he out of a lot of the other ones that you mentioned, for me, he just screams, I am a 3-down back, and I can be a 3-down back in the NFL. And just thinking of teams right now, and again, I'm just kind of throwing it out there. The Detroit Lions. What could put them over the top? A running game. Yeah, they've got a great quarterback, a
more consistent one than what they have.
Oh my gosh! I mean,
from firsthand, you had their running backs in your fantasy league.
Well, I had one of them.
Didn't you have Theo? Was Theo the one you had?
No, I had. Who even cares? I had one of the other ones, but it's like a team like that where you've got a good quarterback, you've got a good wide receiver core. You have a pretty good defense, a defense that's certainly improved.
Amir
Abdullah, that's who I had. They have the backfield for the Lions is the definition of a running back by committee.
Abdullah, Riddick, Zenner, and Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Green. They had a Green guy that got in there too. So I mean, my gosh, they are the definition of a running back by committee. So if it's a Detroit Lions, and again, what else do you need, and what's the most important for you? Could you go and get a Darius Geis in round one? It's just kind of it's kind of something like that. A tough runner, a guy with speed, guy can hopefully bring some consistency. And then that's just an example to throw out there. But he's the type of guy, again, out of all those other guys, that I really feel like has the best potential to be that 3-down back in the NFL.
Well, and I mean, the Lions could fit right where you're talking about, because let's say we use the position you have them at 17, Lions are at 20. So they're right in that area around, I'll say in the area within 3 of that pick. But yeah, it's nothing against Darius Geis. I just question the running back if there's one guy who's like way up here, and then everyone's so bunched together, and it's all dependent on which guy you like better. Because like even you and I, if we rank just the running backs the first 2, you would have Barkley Geis, I'd have Barkley Sony, and that's what I would go with, because I like what Sony can bring, and he can be that touchdown threat. Not saying that Geis can't.
Well, to be honest, my final thoughts before we move on to the next guy would be, I think any team who's not in the top 5 or probably even in the top 3 realizes they're not getting Saquon Barkley. They're not getting the same style of runner as Saquon Barkley. So they're already planning on who's the best running back now.
After Saquon's off.
If I'm them, I'm looking at who's the best running back, because Saquon Barkley's gone. So not even having him on the board, because he's not falling out of the top 3. If Cleveland is smart, he's going 1. But I think that I really think guys could fit well in a team, like I said, like the Lions, and he would be the guy who's their 3-down running back.
Here's what I want to. This is the last guy I want to talk about and I'm kind of going to throw in one of mine also to piggyback off of this, only because we're going to compare him a little bit, but most of it's going to be Josh Jackson, cornerback out of Iowa. And the question I want to ask you, both you and I had him in this range, do you think he will consider, because on mine, he's the 3rd top cornerback, because I had Denzel Ward in my top 25. We'll get to him later. And you have him right behind Minkah Fitzpatrick. I'll ask you, do you think what he brings to the table, 6'1", natural cover corner with great cover skills, and is a complete ball hawk, led the league, led the nation with 8 interceptions this past season, do you think he's going to be a guy to consistently stay at that 2-3 cornerback spot? Or could we see a guy like, on my big board, he creeped in, a Michael Hughes from Central Florida, who I joked to kind of jab at you a little bit with the national championship thing? Or could we see a guy like Hughes jump him, with Hughes being more of a shutdown man-to-man guy who had gone up, not elite talent, but he has gone up against Cortland Sutton, who could be a first-day draft pick, and Anthony Miller, who is projected to be a day 2 prospect in the draft?
Joshua Jackson is the number 1 cornerback in this draft. He's going to be.
Do you think he'll jump Minkah Fitzpatrick? Or
Minkah Fitzpatrick is not a cornerback.
Well, with Minkah, they call him a defensive back, so he's kind of one and the other. So you're saying straight
cornerback is completely different than D-back.
Then go ahead. So he's going to be the best cornerback.
Joshua Jackson is going to be the best cornerback by far in this draft. Size, speed, athleticism. You said what he did this past year. 8 interceptions, 18 pass breakups, 48 tackles. You said it. He's a ball hawk. He's just got insane athleticism about him, and someone who needs help in the secondary, which is a lot of teams, he would be an absolute great addition to their secondary at the cornerback position.
The best thing I like about him, and this is the best thing that I've seen when kind of diving into the film from the games that we saw this year, I saw in one of the reports, it's like he sees the ball like a wide receiver does, but he plays cornerback. And I looked at that and I was like, holy shit, he does. Like, he's a cornerback, thinks about it as a wide receiver, And it kind of takes out the whole, like, I know this is like a joke from like the Devin Hester days even. It's like, oh, well, why was Devin Hester switched to cornerback? Oh, because cornerbacks are wide receivers who can't catch. No, Josh Jackson's a wide receiver who's like, hey, I have cover skills and I like hitting people, so I'm going to go play cornerback. Like, that's the kind of mindset he brings with not exactly that mindset, but that mindset of like, hey, I'm going to look at it through the eyes of a wide receiver, because it kind of relates to me kind of like when you go out with someone who's like really into hunting and they're like, you got to think like the thing you're trying to hunt. That's what Josh Jackson does. It's like, you know what? I'm trying to get this wide receiver to either drop the ball, get the ball intercepted. So I'm going to start thinking like they do. Because if I think like they do, I'm going to have an edge on them. And that has, I think, led to why he's a guy that's led the nation in interceptions this year.
Ricky, Josh Jackson had a 3-interception game in 2017.
Yep.
Who was it against?
It was against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ohio State.
The Ohio State.
And he has 3 interceptions against them in that game
The
where
JT
Iowa
Barrett.
blew them out.
JT Barrett, Ohio State.
That's impressive. I mean, it's one thing to have 3 interceptions against, a team that's or Rutgers.
I'll do it.
Or Rutgers.
I'll throw it under the ball. I don't even think we won a conference game this year.
It's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not as impressive. It's like, that's cool, that's awesome. But if it's against an Illinois, if it's against a Rutgers, it's like, okay, that's not as surprising. But against an Ohio State, people go, wow, that's not only awesome, that's impressive.
And Urban Meyer-led Ohio State
because
team.
you look at the coach of Ohio State, you looked at it's Urban Meyer, you looked at it's JT Barrett, you looked at it's Ohio State, this top-ranked team every single year, and you have 3 interceptions in one game against them. That's impressive.
No, and I mean, and also I looked into it. You can't make a joke about Rutgers because they went 4-8 overall, 3-6, where Illinois was 2-10, 0-9 in conference. So I think we are now the Rutgers joke. So, yeah, we're not that good.
No.
We're not that good. But looking at Josh Jackson, that 3-interception game, 8 interceptions, and that's the last thing I'll ask you is the 8 interceptions. I know that draft-wise you're not just looking at the stats, you're looking at what they can bring, but are you looking at that and going, you know what? What I'm seeing on tape, this kid should even have more interceptions than those 8 that he already had that led the nation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the coaching staff actually wanted him to turn more of those batted balls and those tips into interceptions, which he probably could have done. So the fact that he could have more and that he has that potential, I think that where he's at already, plus the potential that he could bring, it makes him, again, in my mind, the top cornerback in this draft.
Well, and this is where you guys come in for the first 16 through 25. Let us know what you guys think down below of our 16 through 25 and who you would have in this range of the big board.